Orlando, the city beautiful, known for its tourist destinations like Disney and Universal. Home to 280,000 people, seat of Orange County, and one of the biggest cities in Central Florida. But Orlando hasn't always been this way. So where did it all start? The history of Orlando starts with the Seminole Wars. The Seminole Wars were 3 conflicts against the Seminole Indians of Florida that eventually resulted in the majority of Seminoles being either killed or expelled from Florida to move west on the Trail of Tears. These conflicts led to much of the land in Central and South Florida to become open to settlement. The First Seminole War led to Spain ceding Florida to the U.S. in the Adams-Onis Treaty of 1819 and the relocation of many Seminole people deeper into Florida. Between the First and Second Seminole Wars, the Seminole Reservation was established. This territory included the modern-day city of Orlando and stretched all the way from Lake George to Lake Okeechobee. This is where Orlando begins. Around the time of the Second Seminole War, a fortress by the name of Fort Gatlin, just south of downtown Orlando, was established to protect settlers moving into Florida and to help in the Second Seminole War. The fortress was positioned on a hill overlooking 3 lakes for strategic reasons. By 1840, after the conclusion of the Second Seminole War, a large community had begun around the fort, being named Jernigan after the Jernigan family who established the first permanent settlement in the area, over by Lake Holden. Jernigan had its first post office established in May of 1850, which was a major sign of settlement at the time. 6 years later, with the settlement growing north, towards where Lake Eola is today, the settlement was renamed Orlando, and a year later, the post office adopted the name change. It was around this time that Orlando also became the seat of Orange County. Historians aren't too sure where the name Orlando originated, but the most popular story is that while soldiers stationed on Lake Eola took refuge for night, a guard by the name of Orlando Reeves spotted an approaching Indian ambush. While warning his fellow soldiers, he was pelted with arrows, which caused him to die. He was buried on the south side of the lake, where a memorial sits today. Prior to the Civil War, the settlement was primarily focused on cotton and cattle, but afterwards, the leading industry became citrus. In 1875, the settlement was officially incorporated into the U.S. as a town named Orlando, with a population of 85, 22 of whom could vote, and William Jackson Brack becoming the mayor. In 1880, the South Florida Railroad arrived in Orlando and was extended to Tampa in 1883. This was a big deal for the town, since rail travel allowed for easier transportation to and from Orlando. Around this time, the town also experienced a population boom due to growth in infrastructure and available farmable land. Growth was halted in 1894 when the Great Freeze hit the Orlando area. This event forced many citrus grove owners to give up their land. Soon a specific few held on to and bought other groves and became what are called citrus barons. But growth soon continued as usual throughout the next couple decades. In the 1920s, the Florida land boom hit, affecting the Orlando area as well. Some pretty major buildings were built around this time, for a city that was only a few decades old, such as the San Juan and Anja-built hotels. Many neighborhoods were built around downtown Orlando during these times that still exist today. In 1920, 9,000 people lived in Orlando, but by 1930, the population had jumped to 27,000 people. A lot of military activity occurred in Orlando around the time of the Second World War. The modern-day Orlando Executive Airport was converted into a military airbase. Another airport was built 10 miles south of Orlando to replace the now military-controlled one. This new airport was then converted into Pine Castle Air Force Base, which over time became McCoy Air Force Base. Nowadays, this airport is now the more popular Orlando International Airport, which for anyone who's visited Orlando before is probably the airport you've landed in. After the war, many former soldiers stayed in Orlando to raise families. Many other famous services were also built during the growth after World War II, such as Patrick Air Force Base, Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, and eventually Kennedy Space Center. By 1950, 52,000 people lived in Orlando. But in the 1960s, 43 square miles of land near a small town known as Lake Buena Vista were being purchased in droves. Little did everyone know, this was about to become something big. In 1965, Walt Disney announced that Walt Disney World was going to be constructed in Orlando. Right after the announcement, the town of Bay Lake was founded to act as Disney's property. Over a 2-year construction effort, 9,000 people were employed by Disney. Many hotel chains and restaurants were built near the soon-to-be busy area. This construction effort cost Disney over $400 million, about $2.7 billion in today's money. On October 1st, 1971, Mickey Mouse escorted the first visitor, William Windsor Jr., into the park. 2 years after the park's opening, the park drew 20 million visitors and had 13,000 people employed. The city of Orlando soon became the fastest growing city in the state. SeaWorld soon joined the theme park stage in 1973. By 1980, 128,000 people lived in Orlando, over 2 times the amount that lived before the Disney announcement. Disney soon opened other parks, such as Epcot in 1982 and Hollywood Studios in 1989. Epcot was originally planned to be a much bigger park, even being its own town of sorts. The scale had to be drastically decreased, due mostly to Walt Disney's death. Eventually in the 1990s, Universal joined the stage with their 541-acre plot of land. Disney now had competition. This leads us to the main theme parks we have today. Today, about half of the world's most visited theme parks are in Orlando. These include Disney's Magic Kingdom, Animal Kingdom, Epcot, Hollywood Studios, and Universal's Universal Studios. Orlando's population today is 280,000, the 4th largest city in Florida, a massive amount compared to 85 in its beginnings. Its leading industry is tourism, and it's the tourist capital of the state. From the early days of the Jernigan settlement to the ever-expanding metropolis it is today, Orlando is quite a remarkable city. Thanks for watching, everyone. This is History Rudimentals.